December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The devastating air assault on Pearl Harbor thrust the reluctant United States into a clash with the Axis powers.
The militarists of Berlin and Tokyo started this war, but the massed, angered forces of common humanity will finish it.
Battles raged around the world, in the air, on land, and at sea, to preserve the ideals of democracy.
They know that victory for us means victory for freedom.
The fate of the world was at stake.
If we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age.
World War II was the most horrific conflict in human history. It spanned the globe and half a decade, and sparked political, military, and social repercussions that echoed throughout the 20th century and beyond.
I have said this before, but I shall say it again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign war.
In 1940, Franklin Roosevelt campaigned on the promise to keep the nation out of foreign entanglements, well aware that the American voter had no taste for war. But the president and the country had cause for alarm. With each passing month, the Axis powers' tide of aggression spread, threatening to engulf the world. By the fall of 1941, Adolf Hitler's Blitzkrieg had crushed resistance across Europe, leaving a wake of death and destruction. A Nazi invasion of Britain was stalled, but Hitler vowed to smash the island nation. Half a world away, in the Pacific, Japan's Minister of War, Hideki Tojo, forged a brutal reputation with a murderous invasion of Manchuria and an attack on French Indochina. On December 7, 1941, the foreign war came to America. In the space of 2 hours, a Japanese air assault on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, decimated the U.S. Pacific Fleet and killed nearly 2,500 servicemen. Within 3 days, the world was at war. The president braced the country for the challenges that lay ahead.
We are now in this war. We're all in it, all the way. Every single man, woman, and child is a partner in the most tremendous undertaking of our American history.
Just 2 years earlier, the U.S. military was weak and the nation ill-prepared for battle. But as events overseas became increasingly ominous, the country began to rebuild its armed forces. December 7th shocked the nation into dramatic action. "Remember Pearl Harbor" became America's battle cry. Eager young men, anxious to fight, flocked to armed services recruiting offices. Over 5 million volunteered for duty. 10 million more were drafted during the war. After 8 weeks of basic training, these new recruits were battle-trained and ready to fight. New soldiers were given uniforms, weapons, supplies, and standard haircuts. Everything they needed was government issue. It wasn't long before soldiers themselves were being referred to as government issue or GIs. Americans from all walks of life and ethnic backgrounds signed up for the armed forces. Over 1 million African Americans served during the war, though segregation and prejudice forced them into support positions until near the end of the war. Women joined the fight too. During the war, over 250,000 women served in many roles throughout the world, such as pilots, nurses, and mechanics. As the U.S. built its fighting forces, the President called upon the nation's manufacturing might to build the implements of war needed to fight the enemy.
We shall need everything that we have and everything that our allies have to defeat the Nazis and the fascists in the coming battles on the continent of Europe and the Japanese on the continent of Asia and in the islands of the Pacific.
The U.S. mobilization for war stands among the monumental achievements in American history. In record time, the U.S. economy was completely transformed from producing peacetime goods to maximum war production. FDR established the War Production Board, the WPB, to direct the effort, and he set demanding goals.
In this year 1942, we shall produce 60,000 planes, 45,000 tanks, 20,000 anti-aircraft guns. We shall build 8 million tons of merchant ships.
Nationwide drives were organized to collect scrap iron and tin, rags, paper, even cooking fat to be recycled into war supplies. And metals and other raw materials were diverted for use in war production. New defense plants and shipyards sprang up seemingly overnight, and existing factories were converted to military manufacturing. Industrialist Henry J. Kaiser became a national hero as his shipyards built nearly 1,500 Liberty ships. Henry Ford's massive assembly lines turned out a B-24 bomber every 63 minutes. And the nation's railroads made delivering raw materials and war supplies their top priority. After a decade-long depression, war production revitalized the U.S. economy. Suddenly, a nation with too few jobs had to work overtime to supply the Allied effort. As the nation's men left for the fighting front, women joined the workforce to fill the vacant positions. Many of them took jobs in the defense industry, making Rosie the Riveter a legend of wartime production. African Americans migrated from the rural South to work in the industrial centers of the North and West. Many were refused jobs because of race. As a result, President Roosevelt issued an executive order barring hiring discrimination in defense industries and the government, and established the Fair Employment Practice Committee to report on unfair work practices, opening the doors of employment for more than 2 million African Americans. By the end of the war, U.S. industry and the American worker were producing more weapons and firepower than all other nations combined. Superior technology would prove vital to defeating the enemy. President Roosevelt established the OSRD, the Office of Scientific Research and Development, to bring America's leading scientists into the war effort. Many innovations developed or improved during World War II are still used today, like radar and sonar technology needed to spot enemy airplanes and submarines, and so-called miracle drugs like penicillin, which prevented the infection of battlefield wounds. Secretly, the OSRD was supervising a weapons project that would play a deciding role in the war, the creation of the first atomic bomb. The cost of war was staggering. To finance the effort, government advertisements encouraged citizens to buy war bonds.
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. What do they ask of us, the heroes we mourn? What do they ask of us, our marching sons across the seas? To stand shoulder to shoulder with them, here at home to do the job of forging the guns of vengeance. Bonds are our weapons. Stop on the way out. You want to say what's in your heart? Say it with bonds.
Americans responded, investing over $185 billion toward victory. Congress raised income taxes and, for the first time, deducted federal taxes from paychecks each week. To control inflation, Congress created the Office of Price Administration, the OPA, which froze the price of many goods. The OPA issued ration books, limiting the purchase of groceries, clothing, and fuel, and sending the badly needed surplus to supply Allied soldiers. Americans grew victory gardens for food. They cut back on travel and carpooled or rode bicycles to save precious gasoline. Driving alone was considered unpatriotic. The attack on Pearl Harbor unified the country in many ways, but it also stirred long-standing prejudice against Japanese immigrants in America. Bowing to political pressure, President Roosevelt ordered the immediate relocation of over 110,000 Japanese Americans to remote detention camps. They were forced to abandon or sell their homes and businesses, in some cases, overnight. Many lost everything. More than 70,000 of the relocated were Nisei, Japanese Americans born in America and citizens of the U.S. Despite the unfair treatment, the interned Japanese Americans did their best to make the camps tolerable and remain loyal to the United States. Many Nisei even became U.S. soldiers. Regrettably, more than 100,000 Japanese Americans spent the entire war in detention camps.